Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for a special call for the JS Mindset website. My name's Denny. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2020, and on the call with me is precious metal and coin expert Bill Holter. You know, each week we try to share with you information that will allow you to understand not only the financial world and the accompanying news flow, but also how to put that knowledge to work for you and your family. Today I'm speaking with Bill only and not the whole team, so you can get some up-to-the-minute information of the physical markets for precious metals. Many of you have reached out to ask, well, how do I do this when it comes to taking an investment position that gives you exposure to gold or silver? So that's what we're going to be going to do today. In the conversation today with Bill, it's pretty important to remember that we are not giving anybody investment advice. What we're trying to do is to give you the specifics of how to do some things if you decide to do something different in your investing. We're trying to share our own personal understanding of the constantly changing environment of precious metals. And as always, you can choose to add it to your own perspective and knowledge base, or you can choose to ignore it. In the end, we want you to be prepared to understand what you'll need to know if you decide to move forward in this type of investing. As always, listen, thanks for investing in the premium side of JS Mindset. There's always plenty of new postings just like this one that are on there, and we hope you'll get a chance to visit the site for a different perspective on most financial matters. Hey, Bill, you know, a lot of folks don't know that I actually met you after my own research showed that some very specific type of gold coins were terribly undervalued. And I was just looking for somebody to confirm that I wasn't missing anything. And then that business relationship from a few years ago soon grew to this great friendship. The rest is history. But let's start at the beginning. How do you decide which medium you should think about for accumulation, gold or silver coins?
Okay, so first off, gold is for your serious capital, and silver generally is your transactional capital. I mean, that's the way it's been throughout history. And the reason being, if you look at price, historically, it's taken 15 ounces or 16 ounces of silver to purchase 1 ounce of gold. And the reason for that, the reason for the difference in price is silver comes out of the ground at just under 10 ounces for every 1 ounce of gold. So there's a difference in price because of the amount of supply. And man discounted the price of silver simply because of weight. Back in the old days where people traveled on horseback, they would have to carry 10 times more silver to equal the same amount of gold. So because of silver being more cumbersome, it was discounted and it leveled out at the 15 to 16 to 1 ratio. In today's world, now it's about 85 to 1, which is a man-made ratio. God's ratio is 10 to 1. So what that tells you is silver is extremely undervalued, and it's only been this undervalued, I believe, once prior in history, and that was just a few years back. So at this point, silver, as Jim would say, silver is going to be gold on steroids.
All right. So, Bill, let's say I pick up the phone and I call you and I say, Bill, look, I got about $5,000. That gives me enough to buy about 3 1-ounce coins. What are my options?
If you had no physical metal whatsoever, my recommendation with your 5,000 would be that you go entirely with silver. And the reason being, you'd be looking at 250 ounces of silver versus 3 ounces of gold. So with that amount of capital, and if you'd never invested before, then the recommendation would be silver. And think about it this way: you'd have in a system breakdown situation, you'd have 250. If you're calling them 1 ounce coins, you'd have 250 transactions versus 3. In other words, how would you get change back if you paid for something with an ounce of gold?
Okay. So one is transactional, and in the beginning, we want to make sure we have enough to make transactions. It's not about asset protection or transfer. This is actually for basic transactions, and that's why we would go with silver first.
Right, for the very small buyer, yes.
All right. How do I secure payment to the seller? There's got to be a level of trust here, because I'm sending money either by certified means or wire transfer or even a check. I'm sending it to somebody I probably haven't met, and yet I want to be protected. Tell me what's the trust factor in making a purchase like this?
You want to make sure that you go with a dealer that has been in business for years. You check the dealer, make sure that there's no history of complaints or lawsuits or what have you. I do all my clearing through Miles Franklin. They've been in business for 30 years. There are no outstanding complaints or lawsuits or anything like that. And I personally would not do my business through them if I didn't trust them. As for myself, I worked as a stockbroker for 23 years and a branch manager for 12. In my career, I never had any lawsuits, arbitrations, settlements, and neither did any of my brokers. And in today's world, that's almost an impossibility, as litigious as the world is today.
So do your research, make the phone calls, and ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that people need to understand is that this type of product is not paper. Bill, this stuff is heavy. How is it shipped?
Gold is shipped by air, and silver is always shipped by ground. The gold will be shipped and received by the customer generally the next day, occasionally 2 days later, and silver, once it's shipped, depending upon where in the country or where in the world you are, can take 5 to 7 days because, as I mentioned, it does go by ground. And if in transit it ever changes hands, it's got to be signed for. So that creates some time in the process.
Bill, what's the smallest transaction you've done? We've got some folks probably listening that have done this regularly, and we've got some newbies too. So what's the smallest transaction you've done, and what's the largest transaction? And are different people better at small transactions than the big transaction?
The smallest transaction I've ever done, I think, was $100. And the largest transaction was a little over a $20 million swap. As far as the very, very small transactions, remember your dealer has to ship, and your minimum shipping charge is going to be $35. So on a $100 trade, that's 35%. With a very small trade, even if you have to pay more at a local dealer, you're probably going to end up with a better net price.
How are things priced? I often hear people talk about premiums over spots. So, or how do we know we're getting a fair deal for a bullion-based purchase? Not a numismatic, but a bullion-based purchase.
Well, it depends on the time frame. I mean, you can go back to, I think it was 2013 when silver really got smashed. Or actually, let's go all the way back to 2008, the very end of the year, when silver, paper silver, COMEX silver, was trading at $9. You could not find an ounce of silver anywhere in the United States that changed hands for less than $15. So, there you had a, 60-70% premium over spot. Now, that was an odd time. During normal times, depending upon whether it's a bar, whether it's a generic coin, or a sovereign coin, there will be a premium over spot, and you can check around and see where the ballpark is. And not always necessarily is the cheapest price your best price. And the reason I say that is there have been dealers that actually sold below what their cost was, and it turned out they were a Ponzi scheme. For instance, Tolving or Northwest Territory Mint, they left customers hanging with several $100 million of unfilled orders because what they were doing was they were taking in new orders to pay for old orders, and the way they attracted new orders was to have the absolute lowest price. So check and see what the ballpark price is, and the absolute cheapest price should be a warning sign.
All right, Bill. There's buying precious metals and there's selling precious metals. If I want to sell it back, aside from going to the guy on the corner that spins the sign that says, "We buy gold and silver," is there a market for what I am purchasing from somebody at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Any precious metals dealer, and there are 23 dealers that deal directly through the U.S. Mint, so those are the largest dealers. All the precious metals dealers will stand and make purchase of your sale.
All right, so I got a couple questions about this, the purchase itself while it's in transit to me and then when I get it. If I've got a purchase, is it insured as it's in transit to me? If I don't sign for it, somebody is insuring this product. Is that correct before it gets in my hands?
Yes. It's fully insured until you sign for it. In other words, it's the responsibility of the dealer until you sign at your front door or the vault signs for receiving it.
All right, so this is a private transaction. I got the UPS guy or I've got the postal delivery guy in my front door. So when it's delivered, how can I assure myself that what I got is correct if I have to sign before I open the box? I mean, what is that process? Is this still part of the faith of the transaction you were talking about?
What you want to do is before you sign for the box, you want to inspect the box. You want to make sure that there's no holes in it. It's not. It doesn't look like it's been tampered with. And these boxes are fully enclosed with brown packing tape all the way around every edge, so there's no exposed edges or corners. Everything is completely sealed. So if it's completely sealed and you're doing business with a reputable dealer, everything is done under camera. If you ship to them or they ship to you, everything is done under video. So you can rest assured that if the box has not been tampered with, you're going to get exactly what you're signing for.
Are you telling me that they have a video camera? Let's say I buy it from Miles Franklin. I order 10 coins or whatever. They're putting 10 coins in the box. I see that on a video. They seal it under the video, and they have evidence that they put it in that box, and that's the box that's coming to me. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's also weighed.
All right.
If it comes through the post office or if it comes through UPS, there is a weight with it, a contained weight. So that will match the amount of coins.
All right. Is it safe for me to assume that if I buy a larger quantity of a coin, that I'm going to get a better price? So where are the price breaks if somebody wants to get a better price? How do we ask that question of the person we're buying from? Where's the price break, or how do we know?
Generally speaking, yes. If you're dealing with bars, if you're dealing with generics or sovereign coins, there is generally a price break. You can look at probably 50 to 100,000 would be your first price break, and then 250, and so on. There is one caveat to that. If you were to be a big buyer of any certain coin that's not in great supply, you may end up paying more for more if the supply is not available. And
in other words, as a buyer, you're driving the price up. If you're driving the price up because you're buying too much of the available stock.
Right, and the stock may not be available. The dealer may have to go out and actually find what you're looking to buy. For instance, Canada does a wildlife series, and in silver they only make 1 million coins per run, and in gold I think it's, I may be wrong, but I think it's 100,000 coins or something like that. The other area you could look at is, for instance, if you went out and you wanted 1,000 MS-65 or 66 coins, dealers would be hard-pressed to find those, so you would end up paying more as they could find them. Because
let's talk about numismatics. Numismatics, which numismatics make sense when we're talking like this? I've heard you talk about Liberties and St. Gaudens. I sort of know the difference, but which numismatics should one be very cautious of, and which ones would make sense for acquisition?
Well, again, it depends on the time frame. If you go back to the year 2010, when gold was $1,000 an ounce, for instance, MS-63 Liberties, dealers were buying those for $1,800. So there was an 80% premium, whereas today there's very little premium. So it depends on the time frame. As of right now, the sweet spot are the MS-63 Liberties and MS-64 St. Gaudens. Once you go one higher, you're looking at, I'm just off the top of my head, $150, maybe $200 more. Whereas if you go down one notch, you're only looking at a difference of maybe $30, $50, something like that.
Is that something with your clients? And all I know is I talked to you. I was, of all things, I just wanted confirmation that I wasn't crazy when I was looking at prices. Is that just something you talk over with a client? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it volume or is it a numismatic thing? When you say sweet spot, that's got to be a moving target, Bill.
It is a moving target. That's why I used the example of going back to 2010, and an MS-63 Liberty was 80% premium, and today it's, 7-8% premium, something like that. So in other words, you can purchase an MS-63 Liberty or an MS-64 Saint for basically the same price as an Eagle, and they make several million Eagles each and every year. And these are coins that haven't been made in 100 years and will never be made again. So there is true scarcity to them, and I equate it to you're buying beachfront property for the same price as a building lot 50 miles inland.
Bill, talk to me about how coins are graded. How do I know I don't have a counterfeit? What can I do to authenticate? If I do a swap, let's say I had just 5 U.S. Liberties of a current of a 2010 gold coin, an Eagle. Okay, I got 5 of those, and I want to trade them in. If you tell me that the time to trade for a numismatic, I say, okay, let's go with the Liberties. How do I know that the coins that I'm getting are true MS-63s? What is the protocol for authentication?
Okay, there's 2 grading services, NGC and PCGS. Those are the 2 services you should rely on. What they do is there are people at NGC and PCGS that have graded coins their entire life. They look at the coins under a microscope, and it's not just one person. The first person will grade it, and then others will confirm it. From that point, that coin is given a serial number. It's a serial number that's on record with either NGC or PCGS. and then that coin is slabbed. In other words, it's encased in plastic with that serial number.
If I receive a plastic, you call it a slab, I would just call it encased coin,
Yep.
and I find that serial number, can I call the authentication agency and say, this is the serial number, can you tell me what grade you gave it?
You can go online.
Oh, you can go online?
Yes.
Well, that's cool. All right, so is selling a let's say I have numismatics, I do the swap, I've got 5 numismatics, and I decide that that's 5 coins too many. How hard is it to sell a numismatic versus an eagle or a bullion coin?
It's exactly the same. There's no additional difficulty.
Well, that was easy.
I mean,
so let's talk about.
You're dealing
Go
with
ahead.
a coin dealer that sees these every day. So, and there's demand for them every day.
All right, so let's go over to silver for just a second. What are the options on purchasing silver? You said that's my transaction metal. Tell me what the options are for that.
Okay, well, it's not just transactional metal. As I mentioned, the right now the ratio is 85 to 1. So somebody with $2 million that wants exposure to metal may be better, will, in my opinion, be better off going 100% silver. Now, the problem is storing it. Where do you store it? Because you're talking a huge amount of weight. So don't think of silver strictly as transactional. Think of it as part of your financial foundation. As far as the different types of silver, there are bars, there are generic rounds, there are sovereign coins from all over the world. I mean, every nation, not every nation, but many, many nations mint silver coins. I mean, the British mint sovereigns, you've got eagles, you've got maples, etc.
Bill, if I make a purchase and I don't want to store it at home, you talked about storage. I don't want to put it in a safety deposit box at the bank. That just does not make any sense. If it's to the point where I really don't want to keep it in the home, what are my options? I know there are storage facilities. Talk to me about that industry and what I can expect if I try to find one. Okay,
first, you said that it does not make sense to store in a safe deposit box, and that's an absolutely correct statement. Storing in a safe deposit box is an absolute no-no. When the banking system goes down, what you have in your safe deposit box will more than likely be gone. For example, back in 1933, people that had anything in safe deposit boxes could not open the box without an IRS agent present, and many, many, many people found out that their boxes had been emptied. So you do not want to store at a bank. As far as storage facilities are concerned, you can look at Brinks has storage facilities all over the U.S., Canada, and other nations. At Miles Franklin, we have an arrangement with Brinks in Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. We also have a storage arrangement in North Dakota. But, I mean, you can go, and if there's a storage facility near you that you feel comfortable with and you want it close to you, that's, we will ship anywhere to any storage facility that a client tells us to.
All right. Friend to friend, brother to brother, how do you vet a precious metal storage company? If things get squirrely, wouldn't there be some serious temptation to the storage company or the employees for doing something unethical, if not illegal? Is that just a matter of reputation and making sure you do your homework ahead of time? I'm at a loss as to.
No, exactly. You vet the storage company. I've actually gone to meet the people at storage companies. I've seen the inner workings of vaults. So, yeah, you do your homework.
You've shared with me the difference between investments for storage of wealth and investments for daily transactions. Do you ever see gold being used as a daily transactional currency?
Never. It's too valuable now. It's only going to become more valuable in the future. So unless you're talking about buying a car or a house or a yacht or whatever, gold is not transactional by nature. Gold is a store of wealth.
I heard you on a call once, and I'm not sure whether it was our weekly podcast on JS Mindset or whether it was with David, and you talked about using a silver dime, what we call junk silver, and that you could use that dime to purchase eggs or something from a local farmer, just transactional coins. Bill, how do you teach somebody to accept, junk silver from pre-1965 as something of wealth? I mean, how are you going to teach somebody that, look, this is real silver, this is a real dime? How do you teach them?
Well, that's simple. If everybody knows what a dime looks like, everybody knows what a quarter looks like, and if you look at the date and it says 1964 or earlier, then you know that it's 90% silver. And in a system breakdown situation, people will very rapidly, and when I say very rapidly, I'm talking about the average person on the street, probably within 2 weeks, certainly no more than a month, will understand that a silver dime or a silver quarter or half dollar or $1 piece, they will understand that it's silver and it's not a dime. It has much more value than a dime. It has the value of the silver content. So it will not take very long. People will very rapidly understand the difference between a paper dollar and a silver dime.
Bill, this is the last question I have, and first of all, you're a good instructor. As much as I think your sense of humor is a little bit off, you did a pretty good job here getting us educated. All right, so here's the downside. What is the risk of confiscation? Everybody says, I'm not doing that because somebody's just going to come and confiscate it, some government entity. What are the risks of confiscation?
Well, there are risks to confiscation. Jim has tried to teach listeners that the best coin to own, or the best form to own, of either gold or silver is a sovereign coin minted by that country's mint. In other words, in the United States, if there's a confiscation, more than likely they would start confiscating Krugerrands and Maple Leafs and Sovereigns and Philharmonics, etc., before they confiscated gold eagles or silver eagles. Then going one step further, the allure of the numismatics is that those are collectible coins. They're not considered bullion. They're considered collectibles. And the highly graded ones passed back in 1933 as collectible coins as opposed to bullion. So in gold, your best bet, if you're worried about confiscation, the very last coin or last gold piece that would be confiscated would be the collectibles, because they're your coin collection. You're not hoarding bullion. It's a coin collection.
Well, Bill, you kept your promise for me. I said dumb it down for all of us so we can learn the basics on how to do this. And you've done a good job. I mean, you got this plumber's son all figuring it out. Hey, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you if they want to ask more questions or if they want to do something?
You can go to JS Mindset. You can get my email address there and email me directly, or you can just email into JS Mindset, and they'll get your email to me.
There you go. Folks, you've been listening to Bill Holter. My name's Denny. We're part of the JS Mindset team, and we normally do these podcasts on Saturday. But we've had so much interest in just saying, teach me, teach me, teach me, that I asked Bill to do this. So, Bill, thanks for keeping your promise. You gave me a good half hour here, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Denny.